Have you ever wondered if you might be sleeping on a literal gold mine right in your own home? Sometimes, the thin line between a piece of junk and an early retirement ticket is nothing more than a thick layer of dust in your attic. From early computers to old toys, things that seem worthless might be waiting to change your life forever. Today, we're looking at 30 vintage items that could be in your attic and are worth a fortune. Vintage computers. Don't be so quick to toss out that clunky, dust-covered computer sitting in your attic, because you might just be holding a winning lottery ticket worth hundreds of thousands of dollars without even knowing it. Just think about the heart-wrenching story of a woman in San Francisco back in 2015. While cleaning out her garage, she accidentally dropped off an old computer at a local recycling center, only for the staff there to later realize they were staring at a historical masterpiece. That wasn't just any old machine. It was an Apple I, the very first model handcrafted by Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak themselves in 1976. Only 200 units were ever produced in the entire world, making them the ultimate holy grail for tech collectors today. The value of these pieces of scrap metal is truly staggering. Appraisal expert Eric Silver shared with Popular Mechanics that a first edition Apple computer once sold at auction for a record-breaking $900,000. Incredibly, another Apple I found in a basement after 40 years brought in $905,000, and today, some are even listed for an unbelievable $1.5 million. Polaroid cameras. In this age of Instagram, where every photo is covered in a digital filter, people are starting to crave a real sense of nostalgia. That's exactly why Polaroid cameras are becoming hotter than ever on the antique market. These machines don't just take pictures, they create a unique physical memory that you can hold in your hand instantly. Depending on the model and included accessories like the original leather case or flash, an old Polaroid in your attic could sell for over $500. The value lies in their simplicity and that signature photo look that software just can't perfectly replicate. Today's younger generation is willing to pay a premium to experience the magic of watching a photo develop right before their eyes, something we used to take for granted. If you still have an instant camera from the 70s or 80s, check to see if it still works. Sometimes an obsolete device is actually the trendiest item collectors are desperately searching for. Costume jewelry. Many people mistakenly believe that only accessories made from precious metals or real gemstones have high resale value. However, in the world of antiques, certain pieces of costume jewelry can bring in thousands of dollars at auction, rivaling their precious cousins. The key isn't the raw material, it's the hand of a brilliant designer. Here's a golden tip. Look for pieces stamped with the names of highly sought-after designers like Miriam Haskell or Elsa Schiaparelli. Specifically, jewelry made from bakelite plastic, like bangles or brooches, can sell for hundreds or even thousands of dollars. Additionally, vintage bridal sets sparkling with crystals are great finds worth hundreds. Don't be too quick to throw away grandma's old beaded necklaces. Check the maker's mark on the back, because they could be a forgotten little fortune. Arcade games. Did you ever own a Pac-Man or Pong machine right in your own home? If so, get ready for a potential windfall. These classic entertainment machines are a dream for any electronics collector. Surprisingly, even if the machine no longer works, it's still very valuable because collectors can use the cabinet for display or restoration. However, a machine in good working order will naturally bring in a much higher profit. For instance, a functioning Pong machine can put nearly $2,000 in your pocket. And they remind us of those afternoons spent in neon-lit arcades filled with fun electronic sounds. Owning an original arcade machine is like owning a relic of pop culture, and their value only goes up over time as original parts become increasingly rare. Record players. The revival of vinyl has brought with it a strong demand for vintage audio equipment. Collectors and music lovers are always hunting for old gear, not just for the warm sound quality, but for that iconic look. Even models that aren't particularly famous, like the Artis Victor Slido-Matic, can bring you around $130. If you're lucky enough to find even older models, the value skyrockets. A 1921 Victrola record player can be sold for $760 on platforms like Etsy. The value depends on the brand, the condition of the needle, and the speakers. Owning a well-functioning vintage audio device is like holding a time machine, where the characteristic crackle of vinyl takes us back to the sweetest memories of the last century. Do you remember the very first vinyl album you ever owned? Please share that title with us so we can reminisce together. Tin lunchboxes. Maybe your parents kept your childhood lunchbox out of love, or perhaps even their own, and now it's sitting quietly in a dusty attic. But don't underestimate this tin box. If it features iconic designs of the era, you're holding a very expensive collectible. Collectors especially crave lunchboxes featuring the Beatles or the cartoon family, the Jetsons. In fact, some of these items have sold for over $3,000. Their value isn't just in holding food, but in their ability to preserve American pop culture from the 1950s and 1960s. Cookie jars. In the world of antiques, not every old cookie jar is a moneymaker. However, if you're lucky enough to find one manufactured in the 1940s or 1950s, fortune might be smiling on you because these are exactly what modern collectors are hunting for. More specifically, cookie jars shaped like famous characters or familiar cartoon figures can bring you hundreds of dollars. Their whimsical appearance and the nostalgia of a cozy kitchen from decades past have turned these humble household items into valuable assets. VHS tapes. Having dominated the home entertainment market from the late 1970s until DVDs took over in the early 2000s, VHS tapes seemed forgotten forever. Yet, these tapes are currently seeing a spectacular revival in the collecting world. Some movies that were never converted to DVD format are becoming high-priority targets due to their scarcity. Notably, VHS copies of banned or controversial films can be worth up to $50,000. However, you should be wary of rumors regarding the Disney Black Diamond line. While some tapes like Mulan once reached tens of thousands of dollars in Australia, many experts warn that their actual value often isn't that high unless it's an extremely rare version. Shay? Instead, focus on finding low-budget horror titles or special programs only released on tape. The condition of the tape and the box is a survival factor. A tape that is still sealed in its original shrink wrap will be worth many times more than a used one. Typewriters. The clack-clack sound of a vintage typewriter has a strange charm, and collectors love the sound of the auction hammer falling when they win a prized machine. Mid-20th century portable models from brands like Royal, Smith Corona, Underwood, Hermes, Remington, or Erica are particularly sought after. A little tip for you, collectors are often willing to pay much more for brightly colored machines, as traditional black ones are very easy to find. The value of a typewriter depends on the brand, its functionality, and its physical appearance. The fewer scratches or dents, the higher the price. Notably, if the machine was once owned by a famous writer, the value could reach thousands of dollars. An interesting point is that, contrary to the usual rules of antiques, professionally restored typewriters often command a higher asking price. This is truly a stylish piece of furniture and a testament to an era of meticulous, patient work. Silverware. Silverware is often a precious gift passed down through generations. However, not all silver sets are created equal. A small tip to determine value is to look for the 925 stamp, the hallmark of true sterling silver. You could be sitting on a gold mine if you own silver sets from prestigious brands like Tiffany or Gorham, with values that can exceed $1,000 for a collection. Beyond the brand, collectors also hunt for specific patterns. Keep an eye out for patterns like Grand Baroque by Wallace Silversmiths, Repoussé by Stieff, or Francis First by Reed and Barton. Conversely, mass-produced silverware from the Victorian or Edwardian eras usually has lower value on the collector market. Identifying the correct manufacturer and purity through hallmarks is the key to accurately pricing this family heirloom. Vintage Christmas ornaments. Christmas always brings the warmest emotions, but you'll feel even warmer knowing that your family's old decorations could be worth a fortune. Hand-blown glass ornaments are not just decorations. They are exquisite works of art. Among them, the true treasure is the pear-shaped Kugel edition, dating back to 1830, considered the earliest form of the glass ornaments we put on trees today. A rare Kugel can reach an unbelievable price of up to $18,000. Even more ordinary glass ornaments can fetch nearly $2,000 each if they are of high clarity. Also, don't overlook shiny bright sets from the mid-20th century. A full box can still bring you about $50. Items shaped like animals or characters, such as Puss in Boots, can sell for $800 to $1,000. So, next Christmas, be careful when hanging those vintage glass ornaments because you might be hanging real diamonds on your tree. Have you ever experienced that rush of excitement when you accidentally discovered a previously unknown treasure right in your own family's attic or basement? Vintage firecrackers. The most surprising item on this list has to be vintage firecracker boxes. It's hard to believe that something explosive and usually thrown away after a holiday could become a rarity at auction. However, the reality is that there is a network of collectors all over the world constantly searching for these. The appeal of vintage firecrackers isn't in their ability to explode, but in their original packaging. Intact boxes or packs with logos and vibrant colored designs, reflecting the graphic style of past decades, are what collectors desire most. The scarcity of paper packaging over time has turned unused firecracker boxes into expensive souvenirs. If you happen to find a box of firecrackers from the old days still intact in its original packaging, you're holding a true treasure of pop culture. Postcards and old photographs. Don't be so quick to toss out those boxes of old postcards and photos, as they might contain priceless historical value. First, check if anyone in your family ever corresponded with famous people. A letter or postcard signed by a big name can bring in a huge amount of money. Additionally, vintage postcards sent before World War I always attract collectors. The image content is the key factor in determining price. Images of luxury ocean liners or even eerie Halloween cards featuring devils and cabbages can sell for $150. Don't forget to check old photos and negatives too. A rare tintype photo of Billy the Kid once sold for $5 million, and lost negatives by photographer Ansel Adams were valued at $200 million. The better the condition of the card or photo, the thicker your wallet will get. Yo-yo quilt. Traveling back in time to the 1930s during the Great Depression, seamstresses created a very unique type of quilt. They cut small circles of fabric and hand-sewed them together to create a colorful bedspread. This type of quilt is called a yo-yo quilt, named after a very popular wooden toy at the time. Today, these meticulously hand-sewn yo-yo quilts are not just items for warmth but works of folk art. If you find an intact, vibrantly colored yo-yo quilt in the attic, you could sell it for nearly $300. The immense effort in every hand stitch by women of the past has created lasting value for this item. Stetson cowboy hats. Did you know that the first cowboy hat wasn't just a fashion statement? Designed by John Batterson Stetson in the 1860s, this hat quickly became an indispensable companion for nomads on the plains. The interesting part lies in its incredible versatility. Besides shielding the face from the harsh sun of the West, the hat was designed so that when flipped over, it became a perfect water bowl for both man and horse during long miles of travel. Today, if you happen to find a vintage Stetson still sitting in its original box in the attic, you might be holding an item worth hundreds of dollars. Collectors especially value hats that have kept their original shape and labels from the old era. An item that looks old to you is a golden symbol in the eyes of Western culture enthusiasts. Air Jordans. In the world of collectible fashion, some early Air Jordan sneakers are now considered true antiques. According to appraisal expert Rain Hirsch from PBS's Antiques Roadshow, Early Air Jordan sneakers can sell for anywhere from a few hundred to thousands of dollars, depending entirely on the model and its state of preservation. Their value isn't just in the brand, but in the nostalgia for Michael Jordan's golden era. Well-preserved shoes, especially those from the 1980s, are always high-priority targets for collectors. If you accidentally find an old pair of Jordans at the bottom of a closet or in a cardboard box in the attic, don't throw them away. A pair of shoes with good leather and soles that haven't crumbled could be a profitable investment you didn't even know you had. Baseball cards. Whether you or your parents stockpiled baseball cards decades ago, you'll certainly be glad you didn't throw them out. Sets from the decades before 1950 can bring in a huge amount of cash, depending on the demand for the players featured. Besides traditional baseball cards, collectors are now also desperately searching for cigarette cards from the turn of the 20th century. The value of a single card can range from a few $100s to tens of thousands if it features a legendary player or is an extremely rare edition. A small tip: check for cards that still have sharp corners and unfaded colors, as condition is the survival factor in the value of these expensive pieces of paper. Have you ever felt regret for accidentally throwing away an old item only to realize later that it was a precious, forgotten fortune? Vintage advertising. Old advertising signs aren't just pieces of metal or scrap paper. They are works of art that reflect the breadth of a bygone era. Today, interior decorators love using vintage ads to create a nostalgic focal point in homes, especially signs from companies that still exist today. One of the names dominating this collector market is Coca-Cola. If you find vintage Coke-inspired souvenirs in the attic, know that they could be worth up to $15,000. The appeal of vintage ads lies in the connection between the past and the present. Vibrant images, characteristic fonts, and simple messages from the 50s and 60s always evoke warmth about a golden age of consumerism. When checking them, pay attention to the condition. The brighter the colors and the fewer the rust spots or tears, the higher the value. Never underestimate an old poster, because to a collector it's an irreplaceable piece of commercial history. First edition books. Your grandparents' old bookshelf might contain treasures worth thousands of dollars. First editions of famous literary works from the 30s, 40s, or 50s often bring in more than $15,000. The pinnacle of book collecting includes the first edition of Ulysses, James Joyce, which once sold for about $355,000, or even The Canterbury Tales, worth millions. To identify if a book is a first edition, you need to check the number line on the copyright page. The lowest number present is the printing number. A classic example is the 1997 Bloomsbury edition of Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. An extremely rare first printing will have a number line ending in 1 and an interesting typo on page 53. The phrase "one wand" is repeated twice in the list of school supplies. Small typos like that, combined with good condition and an author's signature, will turn an old book into a true fortune. Vinyl records. In recent years, vinyl has made a spectacular comeback, turning dusty collections into attractive cash. The value of vinyl records depends heavily on the first pressing of popular titles. Albums by the Beatles from the 60s or The Freewheelin' Bob Dylan, 1963, can be worth thousands of dollars if in good condition with few scratches. However, the collecting world also has surprising exceptions. For example, the 1992 re-release of Nirvana's Bleach album is worth more than the original, simply because of its unique cover design. Or a vinyl record by the Velvet Underground that once sold for over $25,000 due to extreme scarcity. When digging through vinyl, pay attention to the cleanliness of the record surface and the integrity of the paper sleeve. You can use specialized websites like Reverb LP to look up market values for your old tunes. Toasters. You might notice modern brands like Smeg having great success selling retro-style toasters in bright pastel colors. However, if you own a real old-school appliance with similar sweet colors, it could be sold quickly for a very attractive price. Specifically, Art Deco-style machines from brands like Fiesta always attract strong buyer attention. The beauty of these devices lies not just in their function, but in their exquisite design, reminiscent of an era when household appliances were considered works of art in the kitchen. Lamp bases. If you're planning to sell an old lamp, keep in mind that you don't even need the whole set. Antique lamp bases from the right brand can bring in a massive amount of money. Check your attic inventory carefully for any bases from prestigious brands like Tiffany, Handel, or Fulper. Amazingly, some of these antiques have sold for up to $25,000. The value lies in the craftsmanship of the metalwork and the long-standing reputation of the manufacturer. Sometimes a rusty, dust-covered lamp base is a handcrafted masterpiece from the early 20th century that high-end interior collectors are desperately hunting for at auctions. Deeds, yearbooks, and signed documents. Who would have thought that a dusty old box filled with loose papers and ledgers could be a veritable gold mine? First, flip through the school yearbooks of your parents or grandparents. If they had a famous classmate, that person's signature in the book could bring in a huge amount of money. Collectors are always willing to pay high prices for rare handwriting from the youth of stars or famous politicians. Besides that, don't overlook old land deeds. Research those files carefully to see if your family home or property was ever owned by a famous historical figure. This historical connection can elevate the value of seemingly useless papers into precious assets. Loving the memories? Let us know by typing yes in the comments. We're just getting started. Musical instruments. Well-preserved musical instruments, whether antique or not, are often items that bring a large profit when resold. Among them, vintage guitars are the crown jewel of the collecting world. An almost unused guitar 60 to 70 years old can bring extremely high value to collectors or music lovers. Did you know that an authentic Martin D45 can sell for over $250,000? The value of an instrument depends heavily on craftsmanship and whether the parts are original. A guitar once owned by a music legend can reach millions of dollars, like Jimi Hendrix's Fender Stratocaster. Even less famous instruments made from rare woods that are now banned from harvesting increase in value over time. Belt buckles. Items with an Old West vibe always have a strange appeal to collectors and often bring in a lot of money. Dig through the cowboy-style items your family has accumulated over the decades. You might accidentally find a sterling silver belt buckle, 92.5% pure silver, hidden somewhere. These are small but powerful money-printing machines on the auction floor. Even newer belt buckles, if they have unique designs or are meticulously handcrafted, can fetch up to $500 at auction. Collectors look for exquisite carving patterns, iconic symbols of cowboy culture, or the marks of famous metal artisans. An old, slightly rusty belt buckle can contain the true value of pure silver and the admiration of history buffs. Magazines. Old magazines don't necessarily have to be a century old to be sought after by collectors. Their value depends on rarity, condition, and the specific content of each issue. You'll be especially lucky if you own magazines depicting major historical events right on the cover. A prime example is the 1969 Time magazine about the Woodstock Music Festival, which once sold for $113. Collectors often look for first issues, issue number 1, on publications with covers featuring cultural icons who have passed away, or magazines with unique illustration styles from periods like Art Deco. The condition of the spine, the internal pages, and the freshness of the colors are key factors in determining the price. These magazines are like time capsules, perfectly packaging the culture, fashion, and mindset of a specific era. Take the time to flip through that pile of old magazines in the attic. You might just own a visual history book that many people are dying to have. Pedal cars. Forget about today's plastic Fisher-Price toy cars for a moment, because their steel ancestors are the ones that really carry weight at antique auctions. These pedal cars were the ultimate dream for every child in the early and mid-20th century, before the era of plastic took over. For these items, collectors don't just look for age. They are extremely focused on the state of preservation and the originality of the mechanical details. A prime example that might shock you: a 1930 Lincoln model pedal car is currently valued at around $1,000. Their value lies in the original paint, the steel steering wheel, and a pedal mechanism that still operates smoothly. If you happen to see a rusty block of steel in the shape of a car under a pile of old newspapers in the attic, don't be so quick to call it scrap. It could be a miniature work of industrial art that collectors are willing to pay a high price to own and restore. Retro t-shirts. Today, there are many new t-shirts produced with a faux vintage look, but that's not where the value lies. The items that bring in real money are original retro t-shirts featuring advertisements, old school concerts, beloved brands, or eye-catching artwork. Vintage lovers are always willing to pay big to own a tangible piece of memory from the 70s or 80s. Can you believe it? A single shirt can be sold for $300 or more. According to Reader's Digest, a t-shirt featuring musical artists once sold for $300 on the Poshmark platform. Their appeal lies in the characteristic thinness of old cotton fabric and the prints that have faded over time, something no modern printing technology can perfectly replicate. Piggy banks. An old piggy bank could hold much more value than the loose change inside it. In particular, mechanical banks made of cast iron with moving parts are extremely expensive items. There is even an organization called the Mechanical Bank Collectors of America that has been dedicated to hunting these items since the late 1950s. Their value depends on complexity and when they were made. Cast iron piggy banks built during World War II often have higher value because the war effort slowed mass production, making them rare. A classic, smooth-running, mechanical bank can be worth up to $2,500. Which old item in today's video brings back the most memories and nostalgic feelings about your grandparents' or parents' time? Luggage sets. There is a romantic and rugged beauty associated with old luggage sets, reminiscent of the golden age of overseas travel by ship or train. Collectors today especially hunt for vintage luggage with unique finishes that are still in good condition. While a single suitcase might not bring in much money, a full set of luggage from luxury brands is a completely different story. If you find steamer trunks made from wooden slats, leather, and canvas, check the metal locks carefully. Items with intact metal hardware and original keys will be worth much more. In particular, luggage lines from legendary names like Louis Vuitton, Meyer, or Goyard can fetch hundreds, even thousands of dollars. They are not just storage items, they are symbols of luxury and social status from decades past. Vintage tools. Whether in the attic, garage, or basement, the old work tools left behind by your grandparents are always worth your time to search for. Items like saws or hand drills, even if they look simple, old, or even rusty and beat up, can be extremely valuable to collectors. Can you believe it? A set of rusty tools can bring you up to $3,000. Tool collectors often look for items crafted before electricity was common, where metal forging and woodworking techniques reached a high level of sophistication. Value isn't in a shiny appearance, but in rarity, the manufacturer brand, and the historical story behind them. So, before you decide to haul that heavy pile of tools to the trash, take them to an appraiser. You might be holding pure gold under that layer of rust. Perfume bottles. In the world of antiques collecting, perfume is a special category where the brand of the scent is sometimes less important than the bottle itself. Collectors focus on the art of glassmaking and the reputation of the craftsmen who made them. Names like Thomas Webb & Sons, Steuben, or Tiffany are always on the most wanted list. The pinnacle of desirability is Lalique perfume bottles, famous for their extremely sophisticated jewel-like finish. Additionally, bottles produced in Czechoslovakia during the 1920s and 1930s in Art Nouveau or Art Deco styles are also very valuable. A true treasure is a bottle made of black crystal because of its rarity. If you find a vintage bottle that still has its original stopper, the value will skyrocket. Today, there are even specialized auctions just for these small, artistic jars. Early Barbie dolls? Barbie has been a close friend to children for decades, but for collectors, the true queen is the first version released in 1959. This is an item that can bring you a huge amount of money if you happen to own it. The identifying feature of this priceless version is that the doll has characteristic side-glancing eyes instead of looking straight ahead like later models. A first edition Barbie doll, if still in its original box with all accessories included, can help you pocket up to $10,000. The condition of the facial paint, hair, and outfit are the factors that determine the final price. Vintage pens? When it comes to making money from pens, we aren't talking about cheap ballpoints or promotional pens you throw in a drawer. The real treasure here is vintage fountain pens or writing instruments with a notable history. Imagine if a pen was once used by a politician to sign an important decree or belonged to a famous historical figure. Its value would skyrocket when put up for auction. Beyond history, collectors also appreciate the craftsmanship of past decades. Pens with gold nibs, intricately carved bodies, or those made from rare materials like ivory often cost thousands of dollars. If your pen is just an ordinary type with no brand or history, it might just be a piece of junk. But if it carries a story or comes from a prestigious brand, you're holding a priceless piece of history. Vintage Halloween costumes. It might seem hard to believe, but old Halloween costumes and masks can bring you a decent amount of money. While they might not reach the record prices of other items on this list, if that costume mimics a character from a famous movie, like Star Wars for example, you're definitely in luck. The connection to major movie franchises is the key to creating value for these children's toys. Besides costumes, old-style Halloween decorations also attract buyers, provided you're willing to part with these nostalgic items. Those flimsy plastic masks with rubber bands that easily snapped once sold for just a few dollars at grocery stores.
Jukebox. This version allows users to select songs from a digital catalog and request their favorite track. Video rental stores. Blockbuster. Video rental stores, the most famous symbol of which is Blockbuster, were an indispensable part of many families' weekend entertainment ritual. For many, especially in America, the Friday night ritual meant a trip to Blockbuster to browse the aisles and pick a movie to watch. This was a physical experience, where you walked through the shelves filled with VHS tapes, which were bulky black boxes, and later DVDs, selected them, and took them home. However, this model came with inconveniences. VHS tapes and VCRs needed to be rewound before returning, and you always faced the risk of being charged late fees. The emergence of streaming services and on-demand content completely changed our viewing habits. Why drive to the store, face the tape being out of stock, and worry about late fees when you can instantly watch a movie right on your smartphone or smart TV? This change shows that consumers consistently choose solutions that are easier, faster, and more integrated. This process has made physical audiovisual devices and locations like VHS/VCRS and video rental stores unnecessary.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe to Back to Yesterday to discover more treasures from the past with us. We hope today's stories brought back wonderful memories and maybe even inspired you to check your own attic. We look forward to seeing you again on our next journey back in time. Until then, take care and happy hunting.